25 years to compost in the landfill, not compost, degrade. Sort of horrifying, but also fascinating. My name is Reagan Bissonnette. I am a resident of Concord and a very enthusiastic member of Red River Theaters. And I'm just very interested in waste in particular. And we've got a great panel tonight because, as Ryan said, one of the things we'd like to do is, take the really fascinating information we learned from this film, but then talk about how it affects us at a local level here in New Hampshire. And I've got a few questions for our panel, and then we'll open this up for questions from all of you. And we will make sure we cap this at about 40 minutes or so we should be wrapped up by about 8:15. I know that Concord tends to shut down a little early on weeknights, so we gotta get up early. Too late. So we have here with us, we have James, who is one of the co-owner of Lewis Farm here in Concord. We also have Stacey, who is a coordinator for the New Hampshire Farm to School program. And then we also have Dawn, who is the manager for the works here in Concord. And I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves briefly. And why don't you just tell us a little bit about your perspective here as it relates to the topic of food waste.
Okay, James Meinecke. I am currently, I guess you'd say, a farmer. My background is actually, my education is in architecture. My wife and I are both trained as architects. Her background is in law. She's actually state rep for Concord right now for one of the districts. I can't remember. But we own the farm together, and we bought it 3 years ago. We've been working on keeping it as a source of local vegetables and a source of local compost since we took it over. I have zero farming background before this. Since getting into this, have now become a licensed solid waste operator for the state of New Hampshire because I have to be technically a dump in order to make compost. I'm now also getting certified for pesticides now because I need to have that in order to be a farmer. I'm also, what else did we say before? There was a third thing I can't remember. I'm sure it'll come up later on. But my background in the composting specifically right now is working with the state to change the regulations because you cannot compost anything with meat or anything with dairy within the boundaries of the state of New Hampshire. It is against the law. So if you're composting anything that has meat in it or it has dairy in it and you're legally composting, that stuff's getting taken to Maine, Massachusetts, or Vermont, and you as taxpayers are paying for that to go there, or you're paying for it to go into your local landfill or to go to your transfer station. A lot of folks have recently noticed that you can't bring leaves and yard waste transfer stations anymore. Woo-hoo for me. Bring them all over to the farm, we'll make them into compost. But, that's talking with the folks at the state and talking with the folks who are arranging budgets for these things. There's no more money to take care of all this waste. We can't send it to landfills. And there's money to be made if somebody would just let me freaking do it.
Thanks, James.
No problem. Follow that.
Yeah. So I coordinate the New Hampshire Farm to School program. It's out of the University of New Hampshire. It's a statewide program, and I work a lot with schools. Composting is a piece of it. We provide resources and training for teachers who want to use school gardens, like you saw in the movie. It's a great way to teach kids how food grows in the whole cycle. We work with farmers to try to get local food into farms, into schools. We work with teachers to try to incorporate a farm-to-school curriculum, agriculture, nutrition, growing food into the classroom. And composting is happening. Schools across the state are doing some composting, whether it's working with their local pig farmer that comes and pick up cafeteria waste, or they're doing maybe some on-site composting, or if they're lucky enough to have access to a commercial composting company. So all of that is happening across the state. Of course, there's obviously more that could be done. And I also coordinate the New Hampshire Gleams Network. We have coordinators around the state who are paid to glean excess farm food and get it to those in need. And this past year, we hit about 210,000 pounds of food that was rescued or harvested or picked up from farms and donated to food pantries and soup kitchens and other senior centers and all kinds of programs across the state.
My name's Don. I'm the manager of the Works Cafe, and I've always been, my family could tell you, a recycling zealot. So when I started working at the Works, I really tried to make that something that we did reliably. And we managed to get some dumpsters changed over to recycling that are kind of in the downtown area, and got some of our co-businesses to do some of that. And we've also always done composting of our coffee grounds and our vegetable matter, kind of ad hoc. We've often used Lewis Farm actually in the past for that. But about a year ago, we went in kind of full-footed. Made most of our packaging no longer plastic, or a lot of times coffee cups have kind of an oil base to them. Went to almost all compostable packaging material, and now use a business called AgriCycle, which is based in Maine, so they can take the full lineup of food, including meats and dairy, that comes and picks up once a week. And then they use that, if anyone's really interested, I brought some flyers that they have, but they have a depackaging machine, so they can take stuff from supermarkets that's in packages still. And then they make biogas out of the food. Whatever's left then is used in a more traditional composting method. What else to tell you? We were part of Reagan Concord. We helped get the predecessor to this series going, and I hope that at some point we can reconfigure. Reagan mentioned hoping to reconfigure something like that in the future. I think that's it.
That's great. Thank you. So, question for all of you: what was maybe your biggest takeaway from the film, or something that really sort of caught your attention? Stacey, I know you've seen the film before coming here tonight, so maybe I'll put you on the hot seat first.
Well, in the farm to school world, it's educating the kids at a young age so they understand what they're doing, and so they understand the process, and then they can take that home to their families. Working in a school district in Somersworth, they're really into composting, and they want to have composting district-wide, and they have access to a commercial composting company that picks up compost and it goes to Maine, because again, we can't compost certain things in the state for no good reason.
There are reasons.
Yeah. But the composting that they started at their school has now spread to the community. So now there's residential pickup composting because they started it at their school. So these things can happen, and it's because of the kids and the effort that they made in the school, and it's now available to the residents of the community.
Go you first. I went first last time.
Fair enough. I think what I took away from this film is wanting to be a bit more evangelical about what we do. I think in terms of making sure my staff knows, exactly what happens with us, getting them excited about that, and they then helping customers become excited about that as well. A problem always is separating stuff out in appropriate ways, and I haven't quite figured out that exact formula for that, but I think as we make more progress on it and people become more aware of the benefits of it, that will be easier to do. What I did mention in the very beginning, we've managed to get everything either compostable or recyclable in our store except for straws, which are kind of a bugaboo still. Potato chip wrappers, the packages of potato chips come in, and the plastic gloves we use in food prep. Almost everything else is either recyclable or compostable at this point. And I think the more people knew that that was possible, as you said, they would be more on board.
What was the question?
What was either your biggest takeaway from the film or something that really grabbed your attention?
The thing that grabbed my attention most was the chicken soup reference. Talking about grandma making chicken soup. My grandmother is one of, before she passed away, she was one of 16 kids. My grandfather on the other side, the French-Canadian side, is one of 22, but there were 3 women there, so that's different. I heard the stories growing up, from my Sicilian grandmother about how her mother would take the chicken, and on the first day she dunked the chicken in the water, and that was your soup. And then the second day, dunked the chicken in the water and cut part of it off and put it in the oven. And even with all that, you didn't get the meat with your soup unless you were the babies, because they were the ones who needed the protein more and that kind of thing. And this is Depression era, and those are the people who had the gardens when I was growing up, and walking through vines and things like that at my great grandmother's house with my great uncles, and seeing these guys who were doing these jobs that everyone's like, oh no, you gotta go to school, you don't want to do this, you don't want to get your hands dirty, you don't want to do these things, but these are the guys who are playing with their motorcycles and doing their gardening, and it's what I wanted to do. So that's chicken soup led to a farm.
That's awesome, great, thank you. Stacey, can you tell us a little bit more about the farm to school program and the gleaning, and just why it's important to connect children to where their food comes from?
So part of Farm to School is helping to support local agriculture and trying to maintain our farmers in the state and conserve land, but also teaching kids about healthy eating. We have an obesity problem in this country, and a lot of diseases related to the diets that we eat. So definitely trying to get kids gardening and teaching them about food and feeding them healthy food is really part of what Farm to School is all about. And also the gleaning program, I think like 10 to 12% of the population is food insecure in the state. Hasn't really changed, so we have, there's like 300 and 400 food pantries throughout the state. And so there's a lot of people looking for food every week. And the gleaning program was something that we started more than 6 years ago, originally as an idea to try to get this food into some schools as free food, because the school lunch meal program, they don't have a whole lot of money to work with to put a school lunch on that tray, so let's try to get them some free local food. So that's where it started, but most of the food goes to food insecure families, seniors, and children. So, and they love fresh produce. I mean, we cannot glean enough to meet the demand for fresh produce, and it's much different than a lot of the canned and boxed food that you would normally find in a food pantry. So.
And the gleaning program focuses on farms, right? But just to clarify for people here, if they have a home garden, you can contact your local food pantry and they'll often accept your local produce as well, right? Because I think there are a lot of misconceptions about what types of food pantries can accept.
Well, it depends. Food pantries are not always open 7 days a week, so if you wanted to donate to your local food pantry, I would contact them to see when they're open and when they would be happy to take your donations. because they also may not have refrigeration to hold whatever you might be donating. So just do a little background work to see if your local pantry will take your food and when.
And Don, can you tell us a little bit more about, from the perspective of one of the businesses in Concord that's composting as much as you can, what are some of the biggest challenges you face in doing that?
Well, I think I alluded to probably just having people understand what goes where and how to sort that all out. Again, I think there was a few years ago there was a saying that there is no away. When you throw something away, there is no away, and to really think about where stuff does go at the end. So that really is the hardest part, I think, in any of this.
And you mentioned, Don, that before you all moved to a company, company in Maine that could take all of your leftover food, you would compost with Lewis Farm. So, James, can you talk to us about what needs to happen to make changes in New Hampshire so that companies could be based in New Hampshire that can compost meat and dairy, including Lewis Farm?
Funny you ask that. So we're in the process of working with the Department of Environmental Services to to apply for a waiver for some of the regulations that are currently applied to composting, and partner with them to do a pilot program to actually start doing some of this composting. The waiver, the reason we're doing it through a waiver instead of trying to change the rules is because if we do it this way, we can run the program and write the rules while we're running the program based on what works, rather than having to come up with it from scratch and it's not really from scratch, we're stealing from Vermont and Maine and Massachusetts and everybody else who's doing this, but the state doesn't have any employees to write it up. So we're writing it up, we're doing the typing, we're applying for the waiver, hopefully we'll get that situated. But the way for it to change in New Hampshire is the state legislature has to vote on it. Department of Environmental Services can recommend a change, and the legislature ultimately has to decide whether they want to adopt the change or not. So.
Do you already have a bill?
No, there is no bill, there's no anything, because right now we don't want to go into a program doing something we're not doing,
Right.
and set out a whole bunch of rules and start the program and realize that there's something wrong with the way we're doing it. I'm much more of a hands-on, let's try it a few different ways kind of person, and whatever I do for this, or whatever we end up doing for this, our intention is that, number one, farmers retain the right to compost in New Hampshire, and number two, they shouldn't have to become a solid waste operator like me to do it. That's just silly. And